Hello everybody. Good evening, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to this live stream. If you are in the chat, say hello. Hello, AW8. Nice to see you. And today, today we have a different guest, Kevin Williams, who is the author of a book that I've read and I really appreciate, and I try to learn from it, called The Science of Being Seen. He's also a motorcycle skills trainer at Survival Skills. He runs a website called No Surprise, No Accident. And we're going to be talking about Kevin's background, his journey into motorcycling, his current work in motorcycle and road safety, a little bit of a chat about his biking history and kind of stuff he likes to do, some motorcycle myths, and then some Q&A. So if you have any questions, just make sure that you keep firing them away in the chat. And we were going to be just me and Kevin, because Exeter Rider, who I usually have along, said that his bunny had chewed through the internet cable, but I can see from the green room in the stage that he must have found a spare cable, because he's there and waiting. So without further ado, let's bring both of the guests in this evening. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Kevin. Nice to meet you.
Hi, all. Hi, Steve. Hi, Angelo.
We have AW8 and NDGSA Tractor in the chat saying hello. So hello, everybody. And yeah, so Kevin and I were chatting a little bit in stage, Steve, and I told him about your sad story with your bunny.
Oh, mate. To be honest, I don't even know what it is. I literally logged in about 30 seconds ago before you put me on, and I just had a fiddle with it, pushed the plugs back in, and here I am. So,
okay. Oh. Well, if you drop off, we'll know what it is.
Exactly.
You'd be like Elmer Fudd chasing, like, come here, you wascally wabbit.
And I'll have a bunny for sale. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Kevin, welcome to the channel. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to watch some of the kind of the previous videos and live streams that we do here. It's fairly informal. So why don't we start with kind of introduce yourself to the viewers. Tell us about yourself, how you kind of got into motorcycling, and kind of what you currently do.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Well, yes. Okay. How did I get into motorcycling? It was an accident. I got a place at university in London, and I needed to get around. I realised that the campus was right in the middle of London, King's College, in the centre of the town.
That's by Aldwych, right? Really, right?
Yeah,
right, really
that's
in the
right.
center, yeah.
And I knew I was going to be living, miles away, and I didn't want to be reliant on public transport. So a car was out of the question. Motorcycle seemed like the obvious answer, so I went and I basically bought one and learned how to ride it. I've been riding ever since.
How long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
I do. Far too long ago. Okay. 1975.
Oh wow!
So
okay.
Just into my 50th year of riding bikes. Yeah. That
Wow.
sounds terrible, doesn't it?
It sounds awesome. I wish I started sooner. Okay.
So a couple of years of riding a bike into college. Then I needed a job, and there were various hitches in finding a decent job along the way. So I ended up being a motorcycle courier for 16 years. So
motorcycle courier in London. That's my hat goes off to you, and you're still alive.
Yeah. More or less undamaged.
Okay. And so did that kind of have any bearing into kind of where you ended up with doing sort of motorcycle safety?
Yeah, pretty much. The idea while I was dispatch riding was always that I was looking for a serious job. So I kept applying for things in my field of science. even funded myself through a master's degree, but I still couldn't find a job that I wanted to do that was going to pay me anything like a living wage. So eventually it got to 1995, and I thought I really need to do something a little bit more constructive than simply deliver other people's parcels all day.
Sorry, Kevin, I think your audio's broken up a little bit.
Has it? Okay.
You're back. You're back.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I became a CBT instructor after the courier time, and then direct access. Then I decided to get involved in post-test training as well. So that basically takes me up to date, really. So 1995, I became a motorcycle trainer. 1997, I launched Survival Skills, my own rider training school.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the training that I tried to deliver, the name Survival Skills was not an accident, because I realized that I thought that was important was training to sort of ride to stay alive rather than simply to ride better. So yes, my time as a courier did heavily influence what I deliver as a motorcycle instructor. Yeah.
So this is on screen now. Is that just your website, or is that a book, or?
That's two of the book covers. The book on the survival skills there it's a kind of DIY guide to learning about motorcycling with a goal to getting people up to an advanced standard. If you remember the old Teach Yourself books, it's very much along those lines. It starts with the basics, builds through to the more comprehensively the complicated stuff, and it involves a number of exercises that you can take out and try out on the road. So it's not simply a book to read, it's a book to give you ideas on how to actually practice riding out on the road. And the one on the other side, Tarmac Tactics, that's much more sort of about learning situational awareness. So if you've never ridden to the top of a mountain, or you've never ridden in the middle of London, for example, I've looked at the kind of problems that will crop up as we ride in those different environments, and tried to give the reader an idea of what to look for, and what problems are going to crop up.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. But I think you're correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're kind of better known for the sort of science of being seen book and that type of work, right? Would you say that's fair, or am I?
Well, that's probably the one that's got the biggest coverage. Yeah, what happened was that I was on a forum, and I got chatting to this guy called Jim, and we didn't always see 100% eye to eye on motorcycling, but we're both obviously really interested in getting people to see the dangers of riding bikes, and to come up with solutions to make it safer for them. And it turned out that Jim was actually a firefighter, and he worked with Kent Fire and Rescue, and he came up with this idea of a 3-part course called Biker Down. And the 3 parts were first of all, an accident scene management module. So in other words, if you happen to be the one who comes across a bike accident, the plan was to give you some basic skills so that you didn't make things worse when you got there. The sort of thing that he would talk about, for example, very, very simple basic stuff for a firefighter is that when you're walking towards a traffic accident and there's traffic coming from behind you, you face the traffic and walk backwards rather than the other way around and not see what's coming, so that you know that if you're about to get run down too. The second module was a first aid module, and this was cutting edge stuff. It introduced the idea of helmet removal, something that was hotly contested at the time, but as the paramedics said, if you're not breathing, you're going to die anyway. So the chances of doing any serious damage by moving helmet from a rider's head in the correct fashion are pretty low. You know, they've had lots of experience at this, and it's not that technically difficult to teach someone to do it safely either. So that came into it. Tourniquets came back in. Something again people thought were bad. The paramedic experience in military situations suggests that tourniquets actually really do save lives, and they can be left on rather longer than people think. So that was all, you know, it was all dedicated to the kind of injuries that you were likely to come across as a motorcyclist when you encounter a motorcyclist who's crashed. So that was very specific stuff, very useful. And then Jim asked me if I could contribute the third module. Now, he said he knew that the only way that he was going to swing this by Kent Fire and Rescue senior management was if there was an accident prevention module on board too. The accident, you know, the crash management stuff is great, but he said he knew that they needed to have something that would try to keep riders out of trouble. And so that's when he asked me if I'd be interested in getting involved. That was 2011. So we sat down and talked about things. We ran some pilot schemes. And I tried out a couple of different presentations, and the one that got the sort of thumbs up was the Science of Being Seen, which is essentially a look at why drivers don't see motorcyclists, but to get away from the idea they didn't look, but to try to explain that there are real reasons with the way the eye and the brain interpret information around us, why high-vis clothing isn't as effective as people would like to think it is, and why we need to take responsibility for ourselves. So from 2011, the autumn of 2011, right through till 2020, just before we went into lockdown, that was the final biker down where I delivered Science of Being Seen. And since then, I've sort of worked on it on my own as well. It's all, you know, it's scientific research. It's all based on work that genuine researchers have done, and what I try to do is make it accessible to ordinary motorcyclists by, you know, not exactly trying to water down the science, but simply make the science understandable.
Yeah, in layman's terms.
Yeah,
I've been on the Biker Town course, and that particular element was quite an eye opener, really. You know, the science behind it. So it's great work that you've done there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think even if you don't yourself deliver the stuff, I've been on Biker Down a couple of times because it's good to do a refresher every couple of years, and they do talk about, you know, some of the myths around high vis and the fact that, you know, I don't want to give away all the stuff that's in your book. People should go out and buy it and read it, but you know, it's not about the collar that you're wearing. It's about the contrast, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's understanding that. You know, it's the movement that people are going to notice, and if you're just a tiny thing static, they're going to see you, but they're going to look but fail to see, or they're going to see but fail to judge your closing speed. And there are things that you can do, and if you think that they can see you, I think, as you say, you definitely can see them. So taking responsibility is kind of a big part of that. Okay, so I think I had this picture up. That's your book, The Science of Being Seen. I actually have a copy, and that's a very young looking Kevin. Looks like you're delivering the workshop at the Biker Down.
Yes, that was at Rochester at the Road Safety Experience at Kent Fire and Rescue. That was actually shot at the very last Biker Down that I did for Kent Fire and Rescue, and that was March 2020, sorry.
Oh, just before lockdown, literally.
Yeah, literally days before we went into lockdown.
When you were delivering that, probably around the same time, I was actually buying my current bike. It was a Kawasaki in Blade Kawasaki in Abingdon, picking up my Z1000SX.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so how is all that work going, Kevin?
Well, pretty well. The thing is, obviously science evolves. So what I put into that study back in 2011, 2012, when I was doing the research for it, that was kind of cutting edge. That's already 10, 12 years old. So what I do is I keep going through the literature and finding fresh studies, some of which, most of them actually reinforce what we already know, maybe look at it from a slightly different perspective. Some bring out really fresh ideas. There was a paper that came out just in 2019, just in time for me to get it into that very last biker down, which suggested a new mechanism whereby drivers actually fail to spot motorcycles, which is see and then forget. And it's not carelessness, forgetfulness. It's actually a limitation of the brain. If you think about a telephone number, they're usually chunked up into sort of 3 or 4 digits at a time. And the reason for that is simple. We can only hold a maximum of about 6 numbers in our head simultaneously. And the same, it seems, applies to the number of visual items we can actually see and remember. So the problem is, if a motorcycle happened to be sort of like the first thing that you saw when you looked from a junction, and then you saw 2 or 3 cars approaching, a couple of pedestrians, a cyclist, and then maybe you spotted somebody who was sort of walking towards the junction you're about to drive through, you've already exceeded the visual memory limit of the brain, and it's first in, first out. So the one that gets lost is the motorcycle. And this is, the theory is that this could explain those instances where the rider sees the driver look directly at them, believes they've been seen. The driver then is looking around at other things and then pulls out straight in front of the motorcycle. And the rider says, well, I was in clear view all the time. How did they miss me? Well, it's possible that they've simply not even been aware that they ever saw them, because this is not just forgetfulness. This is actually a physical limitation of the brain. So I'm continually updating it, and one of the things I have done, I went to a conference set up by the fire services, and I had to correct some misunderstandings by other people who were presenting science being seen for biker down. So I realized that what was needed was actually an open source sort of resource which anybody could refer to. So there is now a website called scienceofbeingseen.org, and that is all open source. I've made it clear that anybody can use it as long as they tell people that I wrote it in the first place, and that's where I'm continually putting new information as I find it. So
okay,
all right.
But you run quite a few websites, right, Kevin? I mean, there is the science of being seen. You've got obviously the survival skills, which is that's your training business, right?
Yeah,
training.
Yeah, that's the rider training, post-test training for anybody who wants it. I do quite a few courses for people who are in that sort of intermediate zone between having passed their test fairly recently and who want to move on to develop their riding further. Do quite a few courses for those. I get courses from people who have a specific problem. Maybe they're struggling with cornering or slow control. I will run courses for them. And I do courses as well for people who already have an advanced riding certificate, who just want to try something a bit different, really.
Totally bespoke then.
What is? Would you say would you say you're doing advanced riding, or is that a difference, like a different approach to what you're doing?
It's advanced in terms of being above the standard that you will learn to pass the DVSA test. I would honestly say that some of what I do is actually not covered by either the IAM or ROSPA. I'm less interested in getting people to sort of be able to spin the bike around on a sixpence or sort of hold a position 5 millimeters from the curb all the way around the corner. I'm far less interested in that than I am to get them to see what could go wrong on the road and be prepared for it. So that's why it's called survival skills. It's as I say, it's all about my time as a courier. What I learned very, very quickly is that if I crashed the bike and I damaged myself or the bike, I wouldn't be riding the bike for the next few days before I got it fixed. If I bent myself, it might take a bit longer, and then I wouldn't be earning. And then if I wasn't earning, I wouldn't be eating, and I would very soon be out on my ear, being kicked out by my landlady. So that was a very quick lesson in self-preservation, and that's kind of stuck with me all the time.
I think there's something. There's something you said. I think in some of the messages that we exchange, it's not about being able to ride better. It's about riding to stay alive.
Yeah, very much so. So this is why I have focused quite heavily on trying to understand crashes. And this is where no surprise, no accident came in. Now this was, I was doing some thinking on this with a chap called Duncan McKillop. He is a bit of a free thinker. He's pretty controversial. I don't agree with him all the time, but he had some really good ideas on what motorcyclists actually needed to achieve to avoid having crashes. And the missing link, he believes, is it's surprise that triggers accidents. If you've read any Keith Code, you probably know that Keith Code talks about the survival reactions which get people into trouble, the sort of the freezing, the overreacting, the target fixation are just three of them. Well, what triggers those survival reactions? And the answer is it's when things don't go as we expected them to. As simple as that. We go into a corner, we have our mental image of what the corner is going to do. That's how we plan our line around the corner, and then the corner does something completely different, and that's when we get into serious trouble. I remember all too well, I was riding along the bank of the River Exe in Devon. This will be a few years ago now, and I set myself up for what looked like a fast left-hand bend, and I was beautifully positioned. I was sort of body weight all right. I was just about to counter steer left, and I suddenly realized that in fact what I was looking at was the entrance to a scenic sort of runoff, and the road actually went sharp right. I just managed to get the bike stopped before I went over the top of the wall and into the river itself. But a lot of people would freeze in that situation. Many riders who get themselves into trouble never ever do anything to get themselves out of trouble.
The River Exe, that's up in your neighborhood, right, Steve?
That's in Exeter, yeah. I think I know which corner you mean, actually. Yeah, a few people do get caught out there. So I haven't, but I've been here for 47 years, so I know my way around now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of that work, Kevin, is there been any kind of notable kind of successes that you think it's achieved, or what do you think the impact has been?
Well, one of the things that we came up with were what we've called rhyming reminders. They're very simple. They are literally just a quick sort of catchphrase, if you like. One of the ones that has gone down well with people is gaps equal traps, and basically all that means is if you see a gap in a hedge or a gap in a line of traffic that you're overtaking or filtering past, then it's somewhere where something could turn into your path, and so it can be a trap. So those are very simple. We've tried to get some interest from road safety bodies in using those, but unfortunately we've had very, very little success on that front. People don't seem to be interested in taking on board the work we've done, even though we're offering it to them for free. We're not asking for money or anything. So mostly, with no surprise, I've been focusing on the individual riders, because at the end of the day, if we can get the messages across to them, then they're going to be safer. And I think what tends to happen is that then filters up into sort of road safety generally, and suddenly people start taking notice of what people are doing. I mean, when I started talking about science of being seen, one of the things that I mentioned is that if you want to be conspicuous, as Steve said, you need to have a color that doesn't blend with the background. And one of the big problems, pretty obviously when you think about it, is if you take a satin yellow vest, which is the one that nearly everybody wears, and you put that against a nice bright green background, or even worse, field of oilseed rape, and it blends in beautifully. And I pointed out that, in fact, the color that is most contrasting against a sort of a rural background is pink. And I suggested that, you know, you wear your yellow vest in town or when the light level is low, by all means. But if you're a nice sunny day out in the sticks and you want to be seen, pink is actually a very good color. So is blue, actually, a bit counterintuitively. But yeah, get a different color from the one that you would wear in low light, you know, because the conditions are completely different. It's not a one color fits all problem. So
and I think I've seen stuff where you talk about the fact that was it you or was it somebody else that talks about the fact that the eye recognizes shapes. So if you can look like a human, instead of breaking your shape by having, you know, bits of high vis here that kind of break up your shape. That's how ships camouflage themselves, or used to camouflage themselves in World War I, by breaking up the shape. And in fact, one of the guys I ride with, he rides well, he's changed bikes now, but he used to ride a black Kawasaki Z1000SX, wearing all black clothing and a black helmet, and he said, I'm a big black blob. That's easy to recognize, and if I mixed all three colors.
Yeah, there's been studies to prove that as well. It works best on bright sunny days, to be fair. But yeah, if you are a single color, then there is a benefit of being quickly recognized as bike and rider. And the official Home Office advice to the police forces is actually for the rider and the bike to be satin yellow head to toe, for that very reason. Get that coherent silhouette which just leaps out at you and says bike and rider. And
we should do a petition to have them all just wear bright pink head to toe. They'll be super visible.
Well, I was very pleased when the Met here actually did talk about pink as one of their colors on a bike safe course. So the message is getting out.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's what I was taught on my recent course, actually, that pink was the way to go. But if you're going to buy a new helmet, then ideally it would be pink.
Yeah. Do you remember Steve Hislop?
Yeah.
Steve Hislop wore a pink helmet. Whenever I was watching BSB racing, he was the one that you could see in the pack. It was always Hislop with his pink helmet. It stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
I've been trying to find like a day glow pink rain cover to buy to wear on my bike. You can't find it. You can't buy one.
No, nobody's actually making a sort of motorcycle style one. You can get them for cycling purposes if you look around. I did find something the other day because I sent a link to somebody. I'll try and remember where that was and see if I can find that again. I did find a link to a full sleeve pink jacket.
Okay. By the way, I wanted to say links to the science of being seen, survival skills, and no surprise are all in the description of this video. So anybody watching now or was watching like not live, watching the recording, in the description you can see links to all of those. And where else can we find your stuff, Kevin? You have a few other places where you're active.
Yeah, those are the main websites. They'll kind of get you where you need to go. I've got a Blue Sky account, and I've got an account on that platform formerly known as Twitter, which I don't use very much anymore. The one where I get a lot of attention is Facebook, where my page is facebook.com/survival skills. I've got a YouTube channel, which is obviously youtube.com/survival skills, but it's got a UK on the end. I wasn't quite quick enough to get the URL without the UK. And the other one is on my coffee page, where I have the archive of all my old Facebook articles. There's over 1,000 on there to download. Rather than try to repeat that, probably easier just to go and see it written down. Hopefully you've got that written down. But yeah, that's the archive. And yeah, all the new articles go up for free. After a couple of months, I do put them into a sort of paid side of it, but it's only £3 a month so a cup of coffee, less than a cup of coffee these days. Coffee's gone up.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. I do read a lot of your posts on Facebook, and I usually find them quite interesting. And you do them quite often. And I know that on YouTube you run a couple of little live streams every week, right? If I'm not mistaken, Wednesdays and Sundays.
That's correct. Yes, I have a live webcast twice a week, usually at 11 o'clock, called 11s. And basically the idea is that you sit down with a cup of tea and a biscuit, and I take you through some of the more interesting and unusual news of the week. So this morning's main story was KTM and Pira Mobility. What's going down with them, the latest news. There were some other interesting stories. There was something about the Vietnamese bloke being fined by the local state agency for truth and lies, or whatever they're called, for arguing about a new fine system that they've put on for road people breaking the rules. And I looked at a Moto Morini 3.5 that's come back 50 years after the original. Rather nice.
Oh, really?
Bike, actually, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
coming back this year, is it?
Yep, it's due out in the UK later this year, apparently. I haven't got a price for it yet, but I think it looks quite pretty. It's basically red and black, very much like the original Moto Morini 3.5. And obviously it's Chinese. Zongshen now own Moto Morini, but they make a big point of saying that the bikes are actually designed and developed in Italy, and it's and then they're manufactured in China. So they say they are Italian motorcycles,
right? Based on the Kawasaki.
Most of them. It's a V twin. It's a V twin. It is a new engine. The days when the Chinese actually were ripping off other manufacturers are long over. They're either licensing motors. KTM, for example, licensed some of their engines to CF Moto. They are genuinely original designs these days.
Yeah.
I saw your eyes light up there, Steve, when there's another one for me to review.
Yeah,
that sounded like right up your street, actually.
Yeah, I would like to try it. I might be able to try it, but as a brand, they're very difficult to deal with, shall we say. For example, there's only one rep in the whole of the UK at the moment for Moto Morini, and they just don't seem interested in selling in this country for some reason. Even though people were putting in orders, they just weren't being fulfilled. They just sat on them, and nothing ever happened. So hopefully this 3.5, if it comes over here, bearing in mind about Euro 5.5,
it's
compliant, is it?
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll get their finger out there, what's it, and start selling them, because there's a market there for them. They're good bikes, but it's just been nothing's happened with them. So we'll see.
Yeah, that sort of size, 350, 400 is 400, 450 is where Royal Enfield have been killing it.
Yeah,
and now everybody's trying to copy them.
Yeah, including Honda. Now they've got their 350 Highness, which has just come out, and that's next level again now. So exciting times really in a busy segment, but they're all good bikes, at the end of the day.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought you've reviewed a couple of Morinis on your channel before, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I've done the X-Cape and the SCR, and I was promised a scrambler, but it never happened. So again, yeah, I love the bikes. I thought they were fantastic, but I could see that they're just not going to sell because they're just not rolling them out, and they're not getting the dealerships. There's one bloke to deal with the whole country. It's not good, but it's a shame, really, because like I say, they got a market. They could sell bikes, and they're not. So see what happens.
Let's go through some of the. There's been quite a few comments in the chat here. So Patrick, Motor Ramblings, says he wears his high vis gear almost all the time. But yeah, Patrick, as we were saying, it depends on what your background is going to be, right? And the GSA tractor, I think he's made some comments about pink. I think he's protesting too much. I think secretly he actually wants to wear pink. When you go to a bike clothing shop, primarily it's all black. Maybe manufacturers need to lead the way. Well, I think manufacturers will produce what sells, right? Clothing manufacturers
yes, correct.
Make what sells. High vis isn't as popular as it needs to be to get made. Any other color other than black will get dirty and won't clean up. All the excuses not to buy pink there, Andy. Seriously. Dave, you said you ordered a pink high vis. Where from? Please, I'd like a link somewhere. I'd like to check it out. Blake's pipes, I only wear high vis when it rains or in bad weather. Just me. I'm the same. I have a Gore-Tex suit, so it should be waterproof. But if it's like really dark clouds and starts to pelt down, I will put my yellow high vis, because then your yellow against a gray dull background, I think that's when it's most suitable, right? Very good, very good. Kevin, let's talk about some of your bikes that you've owned and some of your bike history. You sent me some pictures, so maybe I'll share some, and you can talk us through them. So what are we looking at here?
Well, you're looking at Le Mans, actually, and the Phase 1 Endurance Moped race to Le Mans. I can't remember what year that was, about 87, 88, somewhere around about there. Phase 1 Endurance were a top World Championship racing team. They actually won the World Championship a couple of times, and they got together with Superbike and organised a moped endurance race. So we took the little AR80 there, removed the engine, turned it into a 50. We'd already done the bike endurance racing series on that machine. Tuned it so it did 60 miles an hour, and then rode it to Le Mans. Well, at least that was the plan. We had a slight hitch on the way to Portsmouth when the front sprocket fell off, and I saw it bounce down the road and into a drain and disappeared forever. So had to remove the chain and then tow the bike to Portsmouth, tow it over onto the ferry, tow it off the other side, and then find a Kawasaki dealer. And unbelievably, they actually had an AR80 on the workbench when we walked in. The guy took the front sprocket off, gave it to us, and said, I'll bill you for a new one. And he ordered one to be delivered next day for the guy whose front sprocket we'd just nicked.
The seat stayed on, which is amazing by the looks of it.
Yes, yeah. It was a lovely little bike, great fun. Pulled wheelies, did stoppies, irritated BMW owners by the million in London. It was great fun. The bike behind it is my XBR 500, and you can see a nice dent in the petrol tank there, which leads me directly to one of my embarrassing tales. I'd ridden that bike down to the south of France, all the camping kit on it, to join a group ride down there. And on the way back, I was coming down one of the mountains and having a wonderful time sweeping down this hill, overtaking all the cars. And I got to the bottom and sort of came round the corner, and the road I wanted was off to my right, and I was just about to miss it. So rather than sort of try any hard, silly braking. I just rolled on down the road in the wrong direction. And there was this lovely bit of flat mown grass between the two roads. And for some reason, which I still can't get my head around, I decided that rather than do a U-turn and do it properly, I would just ride across the grass. And I got halfway and I fell into what could only be a World War II tank trap. It was about 4 foot deep and the bike just went straight into it. Hence the dent in the tank. I had a hell of a job getting it out of this enormous hole. So yeah, don't take shortcuts across grass because you don't know how big the holes are in it.
Can't see. Steve's got a history with grass as well.
I have, yeah, and Harley Davidsons. Yeah. Except I can't get mine off the grass. You got yours on the grass. So yeah, well done.
And the GSX tractor saying saves money on fuel if there's a dent in the tank.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, no, you just have to stop more often, isn't
it? Yeah.
That's
that's
nice.
One of my current bikes. That's now registered as a historic motorcycle. That's a CB250 RSA. I lost count of how many of those I had when I was a courier. They were pretty standard bikes at the time. Little 250, 26 horsepower, sort of 80 odd miles per hour flat out. And best of all, they did anything between 80 and 90 mpg. So I rode them mostly all over the south of England. I did have a bigger bike for doing the really long distance trips. But, you know, if I had to go to Birmingham or somewhere up the motorway, I'd jump on the 250, just use that. And of course, it was a wonderful little in-town bike, and it still is. Still a great little bike to ride.
Well, if it's a historical vehicle now, no ULEZ.
Absolutely. I have taken advantage of that too. Yes, I've ridden it into central London on occasion. Yeah.
Yeah, that's you know, that's the way to go, I think, especially if they start going with EVs and stuff. Just get an older one, 40 years old, and no MOT, no VD, no ULEZ. There you go.
Starting to see classic minis and VW Beetles sort of parked up around the place. Yeah.
I'm thinking scooters. I'm thinking like some old Lambrettas.
Yeah, they
do the trick.
Do you have to pay ULEZ on yours, Noob? On your
Himalaya? No, because mine is Euro 4 or Euro 3 or Euro 4. Okay. I think Kevin will probably know if a bike is Euro 3 or higher, it's exempt from ULEZ.
Yeah, I think it's Euro 4.
Euro 4. Okay, so mine are both Euro 4.
Which sadly this one wasn't. This was my FZ 750 Yamaha. Lovely bike. Anybody recognize the scene?
Nope.
It's about as far north as you can get in Scotland. It was a place called Durness, looking out over the bay. Cape Wrath is sort of off to the in front of the bike, and I think John O'Groats is behind it. So it's about as far north as you can go. And it was an absolutely stunningly beautiful day. The picture there has actually come out a little bit faded. The sea was actually a really quite deep blue, and there's this sort of almost white sand. And there were people sitting on there, sunbathing and swimming. It looks more like the West Indies or Australia than Scotland.
I can vouch for that. I took a family on a holiday to the Isle of Mull, and we went to the beach there, and I looked at it, and it was beautiful white sand, a beautiful blue sea, lovely sunny day, relatively warm for Scotland. I got all excited, and I took a run, and I jumped into the sea, and I could not swim any faster to get back out again because it was freezing. Absolutely freezing.
Yeah, wetsuits were a good idea up there. But yeah, lovely day. The bike is probably my favorite of all time motorcycles. The engine on those FZs was an absolute delight. It just pulled from anywhere. It wasn't particularly fast. I think 90 horsepower or something was claimed for them. It would just about hit 150 in a straight line if you had long enough. And it was frugal as well. It was another bike that would quite easily do 60 mpg. I loved mine. It was a bit of a bust to handle. I mean, it wasn't the quickest steering bike, but it was just so stable, so comfortable. Apart from the seat, actually, the seat was a plank, but it was just a lovely bike to ride. And I was absolutely gutted when it ran its bottom end. I just had the engine completely professionally rebuilt, crankshaft reground by a pro, and it did about 7,000 miles, and the bottom end failed, and I just couldn't afford to get it back together again.
Oh.
And that's my godson playing on the bike. He's now well over 6 foot, so he wouldn't have any troubles reaching the bars like he does there.
Very good. Is he a rider?
No, he's not, but his brother is, and so's his dad. Now where's this? This is Austria, and this is the CompuServe Motorcycle Club, circa 2000 and probably 2000 actually. This was, if anybody does remember CompuServe, it was a sort of internet access before dial-up, when when you still had to sort of phone in through a modem. And there was a motorcycle group on there, so I got involved, and very quickly I was on group rides with the bunch, and that is my GSX-R 750 WN with the beautiful pink flashes. That was probably where I got the inspiration for pink. The bike there is minus airbox. It was the only way I could get it to the top of a mountain. It had been stage 3 tuned. It had a race header on it. I'd already taken the race pipe off and put a road legal pipe on, so it was sort of tolerably loud. But it simply would not pull above about 2,000 meters. So when we went up sort of near 3,000 meter hill, I got to the top, everybody stopped for lunch, and I just went straight over the top and carried on down, because I just knew I'd never get the thing restarted up there. So after that, I removed the air box, and basically it was breathing straight into the carburetors to try and get a bit more air in to match the fuel input. It was belching black smoke at the top of the mountain. It was running so rich.
Wow.
Which is why I always tend to leave motorcycles standard. I've been fiddled with before I got to it, but I tend to leave them standard because they generally work.
Yeah, but that was the issue with card bikes right before all the electronic gizmos and stuff. You had to, total lack of foresight not to take some different jets up there, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. I got pretty good at whipping that petrol tank off, I can tell you.
That's the Jigsaw again.
Yeah, that's the bike. It was surprisingly comfortable. I rode it from Italy via Austria, then back into Germany. I did 960 miles on it in less than 24 hours, quite a lot less than 24 hours actually. And I had to get off the bike obviously at Zeebrugge, because I was about to catch a ferry, and at that point I'd done 900 miles, and I got off and kind of stretched my legs and just went off and got a coffee, and I felt fine. For a race replica, the comfort of that bike was absolutely astonishing. And you see that sort of tractor style seat, I still haven't ridden anything with a seat as comfortable as that. It's not the thickness and the padding, it's the shape of the seat that matters. The padding on that was literally about 2 centimeters thick, but the shape was so supportive. It was freakishly good at touring.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's
Right.
an old Hornet there, isn't it?
That is an old Hornet. Yes, it's the fared model. That is the top of a mountain in the Mont de Cantal, which, if you've never been there, go find them on the map. It's an extinct volcano, stratovolcano. It's huge, and there are some wonderful roads which kind of zigzag their way up the valleys till you get to the top. And on a clear day, you can see for miles. That was obviously not a clear day, and it was bleeding cold. Considering it was July, it was about 12 or 13 degrees down in so it's towards the south of France. It should have been a lot warmer than that. But yeah, that was the Hornet. I've still got that one. That's now relegated to my sort of a spare bike in case the work bike breaks down. It's now got 90 odd thousand miles on the clock. Still sounds sweet. Still goes well. It's been used for track days, but it's non-ULEZ compliant, so I would have to pay to use it. There is a way around this. You can get a declaration from Honda, who will send you the actual emissions tests copy for the vehicle, and the old Hornet passes with flying colours. So if you go to Honda, ask them for the certificate, they'll send it to you. You then register your bike as compliant with TfL, and then you don't have to pay ULEZ. But if you don't do that, obviously I think it's £12.50 every time you take it out, which is a bit tedious.
Oh dear, what a nightmare.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Andy's asking, how many bikes do you have?
3 at the moment. We've got the Hornet, we've got the CP250 RS, and we're going to see the next one in a moment, I think.
Okay.
That's the Hornet.
That's still the Hornet.
That was me almost but not quite winning the Welsh National Rally. How did you win the Welsh National Rally? Well, you managed to find your way from waypoint to waypoint, which wasn't too difficult. And then you had to answer a bunch of questions on Welsh history, and I got more of them right than most of the Welsh people who entered I finished second. And the only reason I finished second was because my bike was newer than the guy that finished first. So that was the GS500. That was another excellent little dispatch bike. That one's the CX500. That is a sunnier day in the south of France. That was an interesting machine. It was very comfortable. But yeah,
they're very popular with custom builders these days. I think a lot of people take CXs and modify them.
They're being chopped up all over the place. I kind of feel a bit sad because, I kind of like the original, and I look at some of the customs and I can see that people put a lot of work into them, and I think, nah, it just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That was a training course. That was in Cumbria. We had 5 days of absolutely glorious weather in the low 20s, and the day I left, the heavens absolutely opened. I was very glad that I had my old people carrier and popped the bike in the back of it, because I had so much gear like projectors and laptops and things. I just couldn't carry it all reasonably on the bike. And that's the current. That's the current motorcycle. That's the XJ6.
Oh, XJ6. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got the Hornet, the XJ6, and the 250.
That's it. Yeah. So that shot's taken at Castle Combe race circuit. I'd been running the classroom session for the rider skills days that they were having there. Basically this was put together by Somerset Road Safety Partnership. So they got the track instructors to teach people how to ride around the track. That was the carrot. And the other exercises with the classroom bit, there was a guided sort of an assessed ride by the local IAM group. And there was a couple of other things. They used to get guest speakers in. Had a really, really interesting one from Avon Tyres, who unfortunately no more, of course.
Okay. I think Hop Rider Training does something similar at Catwalk Park, where you can actually do like a whole weekend where you can do like the local IM will take you out on the roads near there, and then you spend like an entire day on track with some skills drills in the morning, and then just going around the track in the afternoon.
Yeah, Martin Hop actually was part of this team down in Somerset. He'd come down and he would run exercises on the track, not round the track, but using bits of the track to demonstrate particular points. So yeah, he was actually on this one, and I have done one of the Cadwell days up with Hop as well, and good fun it was too, I have to say.
Okay. And then we're going into some more historical stuff here.
Yeah, that is Utah. I was taking a trip with some friends, borrowed that BMW GS100 that you can see there, the white one. We rode all the way from Las Vegas to the top of the Rockies and spent several days camping and rode back again. And it was an amazing trip. It was hard on the backside. That BMW wasn't nearly as comfortable as my old Suzuki, actually. But yeah, it was a great trip. Met some people, made some friends, and very much enjoyed it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's nice if you could just borrow a bike when you're somewhere like that. Is that still Utah?
This is New Zealand. I
Wow.
can't remember the name of the lake, but it really is that spectacular blue. And the bike there
South
is
Island.
South Island. Yeah, this is a Tracer 900. And I have to thank the New Zealand Transport Agency and the Accident Compensation Corporation for this, because they invited me over to talk on these road safety interventions that they were running called Shiny Side Up. And basically, these were a series of roadshow events that lasted for 5 weeks around New Zealand. I got an invite in 2018 and got a Suzuki V-Strom. This was 2019, and Yamaha backed us with bikes. But I'd suggested, rather than sort of flying us from venue to venue or giving us a hire car, why not actually get us motorcycles? And then all the presenters, who were all motorcyclists, the Brittany Morrow, sometimes known as the Road Rash Queen. She's an American woman who fell off the back of a motorcycle when she hitched a ride with somebody, came off at 100+ miles an hour, lost most of her skin.
I've read a story. I've read a story.
It's quite horrifying.
Yes,
and
yes.
she tells people about the injuries and the recovery that is necessary when you've ripped most of your body off. Quite horrific. And she's very brave, and she rides, and she loves riding now. She got taught properly, and she's even done some racing. We have a chap called Chris Haren. He's a professor of materials sciences from Deacon University in Australia, and he is behind the Motocap project, if you've heard of that. What he's basically doing is replicating the tests that Dr. Rod Woods in the UK originally set up in Cambridge. He's replicating it on secret shopper bought motorcycle kit. So he takes a sample of the material, sticks it on his testing machine, and he rates it as to how well it's doing. And they do other tests. They test the body armor, they test the breathability and the waterproofness of the garment, and puts it all together and comes up with a rating system. And some garments have done remarkably well, and some, which should have done a lot better, have done really, really badly on his tester.
Right. So it's kind of similar to the Sharp system.
It is, and
I bet you.
Yeah, exactly. It's rated on a 5-star system, so it's very similar to Sharp, but for motorcycle kit. Yeah, so he was one of the presenters. He's been around New Zealand on the bike. A chap called Dave Moss. He's an expat Brit who lives in California, who tunes motorcycle suspension.
Oh yeah, I've seen this channel. He talks a lot about tuning. Suspension
so he came over and came around with us and helped people set up the bike. So yeah, that was a great intervention. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, maybe I'm just keeping an eye on the clock here. We've been going for nearly an hour, and it's kind of flown by because I think it's been so interesting. We had some great comments down as well. But one of the things I wanted to discuss with you is some of these motorcycle safety myths that we hear, and I wanted to get your take on some of them. So let's start with one. Loud pipes save lives?
Yes. The problem is that sound is it attenuates as the square of the distance or something, half of the square distance. I can't remember quite how it works, but basically it's exponential. So what starts off as a very loud sound is very quickly not a very loud sound. If you went and stood next to Concorde back in the days when it was flying and when it was taking off, the engines were way over 130 decibels or something. You'd have been deafened, literally deafened by the noise blast. But if you're standing at the side of the runway, it's loud. When it flies overhead, it's noisy. And that sound level is dropping dramatically the further away you get. And that's the problem with motorcycle noise. You make a lot of noise when you're standing next to your bike. When somebody is 40 meters or so away, you can barely hear it. And the other thing, of course, is that the noise is focused. This is something that people forget, that motorcycles have designed pipes, silencers, to send the noise in a particular direction to help defeat the noise test microphones, which are kind of were stood at the side of the bike. So the sound is directional, and it does go out behind the bike rather than forwards. If you rip off those silencers and stick something else on that hasn't got the baffling, it will be noisier, it will be less directional. But most of the sound does not go forwards from a motorcycle. You only have to sit in your own car and leap out of your own skin when something noisy suddenly flies past, which you haven't seen, to realize just how the sound does not travel in the way people expect it to.
Yeah, but also it travels backwards, right? The pipes point backwards.
Yes, absolutely.
The danger's in front of you. Okay. What else? Drivers don't look.
I think the answer to that one is that there are 40 million drivers in the UK. There are around about 1.2 million motorcyclists. There are something like 1,100 serious accidents involving motorcycles at junctions every year. About 100 fatalities a year happen at junctions. So, just basically do the sums. There are 40 million drivers and there are 1,100 who get it badly wrong. That means 39,990,000 are seeing every bike that they need to every time a motorcycle approaches. Even if you start factoring in sort of near misses and you sort of take a figure of absolute guesstimate, because I don't think anybody's calculated it. You say maybe 100,000 near misses every year. We're still looking at 39,900,000 drivers who see every bike that they need to see. So, the idea that drivers don't look is mathematically, I won't say impossible, but certainly very, very, very improbable.
It doesn't stand up to the data, right?
No, absolutely not.
And I think, in my mind, what it also says is you're blaming them for not seeing you, but you're putting at that point, or not hearing you. But at that point, you're putting your safety in their hands. You're now passive.
Yeah.
You're now saying it's up to you to keep me safe, rather than for me to take action to account for your stupidity.
Yeah, absolutely. And this brings us back to sort of survival skills. It brings us back to no surprise, no accident, and science of being seen. It's all about taking proactive management of the situation. It's about understanding that it can go wrong, having a plan for it when it does go wrong, and not just simply relying on somebody else to do the right thing. Far too often people, say, "Oh well, I could see the car. I knew he was going to pull out on me." I've heard that one so many times. Well, if you knew that, why didn't you do something? Even if you stop in the middle of the road and wait for the car to back out of the driveway. I've done that in the past. I was coming along a road and I could see that this driver was having difficulty getting out of a narrow entrance because there were awkwardly parked cars on both sides of the road. So I just stopped and let him out, and he sort of backed carefully out into the road. And of course, as soon as his passenger side window emerged, I saw him actually jump out of his seat, because there's my bike stopped a meter from where he's backing out, and he hadn't been able to see me. But that's so simple to do. We just have to see it coming. That's
Yeah.
Well, but the video of that, Kevin, doesn't get nearly as many views as if you were beeping and swearing at him and smashing his mirrors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the problem. I kind of sometimes I need to put up a sort of 60-second safety video. Nothing much happened, did it? Because that's what happens. Nearly all the time we ride, nothing much happens. We simply don't see the things that go right. Human brain's not tuned to seeing things that go well. What we're attuned to is seeing the things that go badly, so we don't make the same mistake twice, hopefully. But the trouble is we may not survive getting it wrong the first time, and this is the real problem for motorcycling.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually gotten into the habit of sometimes if a driver is coming to a junction and they see me, I actually wave and thank them for stopping.
Yeah, me too.
And you start noticing that most of them actually do see you and actually are looking out for you. So there shouldn't be that kind of conflict. You're going to say, yeah, well, thank you for seeing me and whatever. And hopefully then they'll say, oh, that biker was nice. He waved to me, and maybe I'll be more careful in the future.
Yeah, maybe you've just imprinted the a bit more awareness of motorcycles by doing that. I mean, I have no problem with that at all. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
maybe there's an article there to be written.
Maybe.
I think I've had it a few times when you sort of see them and they've seen you. You can kind of see that they've seen you. They'll look but when they turn back again, they almost forget that you're still there. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
start polite.
Yeah, I talked about that partly that earlier. If there are many things at a junction for the driver to focus on, then it is possible they can look and forget you were there. The other problem is that this idea that you make eye contact with someone, I'm very dubious about it at all. You can make eye contact with someone who's standing on the other side of a room, but then they're maybe 10 meters away. You can't do that when somebody's 50 meters from you. All you can do is think that they were looking in my general direction. And the thing to remember is that the bit of the eye that gives us clear color vision, the focused bit, is only literally 5 degrees of vision. So it's a very, very tiny cone. And so somebody can be looking in our direction. We think they're looking at us. They're actually looking at the car, which is 20 meters behind us. And as far as the brain of the observer is concerned, the bike's not there. It's the car they've seen. That's what they focused on. So the only time I'm convinced that somebody's seen me is when I am past them.
Yeah. Opinions on changing position when you're coming up to a junction? We'll see what do you guys think on that? Going from position 3, for example, to 2 or 1 or whatever.
So you're talking about moving laterally across the road?
Yeah.
Yes.
There are some good ideas on this. I first came across this from Duncan McKillop, who I mentioned earlier. He had a video which he produced years and years and years ago, where he did what he called the wiggle, and basically he would take hold of the handlebars, and this was when you had the sort of single headlight mounted in the middle of them, and just wiggle the bars. And what that did was made the headlamp flicker. Now the eye is very sensitive to flickering light. It will drag your attention to it almost instantaneously. The downside is, of course, you've just destabilized your bike, so I'm never too keen on that. Somebody on one of my training courses was taking that to extremes and sort of wiggling the bike for about 50 meters all the way up to the potential point of impact. And I think the car drivers were going backwards at that time because they thought he was about to crash. So
worked then, didn't it?
A chap called Malcolm Palmer, he used to be a bike trainer himself. He ran the Blue Ribbon scheme for BMF for a while. He came up with something he called the Z line, and the idea he had was again to exploit lateral movement. You have the width of the lane, and what he suggested was that, as most riders would probably start to right of centre if they've done a bit of advanced training, would actually to move to the left, which sounds sort of counterintuitive because you're getting closer to the car that's about to pull out on you if that car is on the left. Then what you can do is you've got the entire width of the lane to move back to the right. So the
Yeah.
idea was that you put in a sort of double movement. He called it the Z line. And, you know, the only proviso on that is that you make sure that you're upright again before you might need to hit the brakes for an emergency stop. There is, you know, the eye is definitely sensitive to lateral motion. Again, if there is a hunting animal eyeing you up, what it will be doing very carefully is coming in at you on a path which means it doesn't move against the background. Something like a lion, for example, will find an acacia tree or something behind it, and it will line itself up very carefully so that even if you move around, it follows a path which keeps it stationary relative to the background, and that makes them very difficult to see. That's why they're so successful as hunters.
I've got another question, if I may, and this is something which I do, which I don't think anyone else does. On a very sunny day, if the motorway is snagged up, the M5 or whatever, and let's say it's moving 20, 30 miles an hour, and I've got a clear line of sight, and like I say, I'm talking a really sunny day, okay? Something which I've found works for me, and this could be wrong, is I put my full beam on, and it tends to attract, you can see the drivers actually seeing me, so I don't shock them when I'm filtering through. I don't know what your opinions are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've done the same, to be honest. And I think in those circumstances, when everything's moving very slowly, then it does act as an attractant. Again, I certainly wouldn't be relying on it, and I certainly wouldn't be blasting up the gap at 60 miles an hour, as I've seen people doing. You know, each vehicle you pass has to be treated as a separate overtake. That's the only safe way to approach this. So yeah, but you know, the same with hazard lights. The French have just decreed that filtering between stationary lanes or slow moving lanes of traffic on French dual carriageways and motorways is now legal. And there is a statutory requirement, I believe, to use hazard lights if you've got them. I'll double check that actually, but I think that's what it is. And so, yeah, I mean, if you can give people a helping hand to see you, I don't think that's too much of a problem. But I do get really hacked off with people who sit on main beam or when they're following you. You know,
because it can dazzle you.
Yeah, absolutely. Or coming the other way. There was a guy near where I used to live in Kent who used to go up and down the road I lived in, and he had a BMW which was littered with lights, and they were all on stun. You know, you know, it looked more like you were seeing the end of the world approaching, this sort of bright light coming towards you.
Yeah, you can't use his indicators.
Well, no, you couldn't see them.
Yeah, we couldn't see them. We were blinded. But what I found interesting about you just touched on the French. Actually, it was always a bit of a grey area over there, whereas in the UK it's always been legal so long as. But the language in the UK was always very vague. So if you do it safely and you do it slowly, what does that mean? What does slowly mean? Whereas the French have been actually very prescriptive. They said you can do it so long as traffic is moving up to, say, 50 kilometers an hour, which is about 30 miles an hour. And you cannot filter if you yourself are going over. So they've actually put limits and said this is what we mean by safe and slow. It's 50 kilometers an hour or 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's the way the UK road code is set up. Virtually everywhere else in the world, what they've done is they've sat down and decided what's legal and what's illegal. And so the Australian road code is several thousand pieces of law long that you have to know. It's incredibly complicated. I got hold of it to look at it up before I went and drove in Australia, and I thought, you must be kidding me. I'm never going to remember all this. Whereas the UK road code is rather different. It's if there's not a rule against it, it's legal. So, and this is how filtering works. You know, when people talk about whether is filtering legal or illegal, well, it's not illegal because there's nothing in the road code that says you can't do it. So then you are judged on whether you are careful and considerate to other road users, and so you would fall foul of the sort of careless driving rules or potentially dangerous driving rules. So that's how it works in the UK. So yeah, if you go silly speeds down the middle of a lane of traffic and you do it past a policeman, they're likely to get slightly upset about it.
One thing I like to bring up as well, if I may, Neeb, I don't know when you want to shut this off. I'm fine for time, but is how the highway code has got so much more complicated now. And what I mean by that is pedestrian crossings, for example, just after a roundabout. All right, so you're looking right, blah blah blah. I know you've got to adjust your speed, obviously, but it almost seems like it's set up to fail sometimes. I mean, I can see some of it is to slow you down, to make you more aware, but at the same time, another pet hate of mine is double junctions, where you've got a junction, then a cycle lane junction. You're kind of doing it twice, and a lot of things can go wrong in between that time. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think things have got a lot more complicated, and the hierarchy of harm rules that came in a few years back, which means that you have to legally give way to pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders, motorcyclists, in order of hierarchy. If you drive a truck, basically you have to give way to everybody. They do make life difficult. I'm guessing you guys probably know Ashley Neal's channel.
Yes.
Yeah, the driving instructor. Well, he showed a video shot from one of his learner cars, where the learner correctly, according to the law, gave way exiting a roundabout to let two people cross the road because they actually stepped into the road already. There was no formal crossing point there, just a sort of traffic island in the middle. And the learner stopped and actually said, "This is the correct procedure." And yeah, if you're on car tests these days or bike tests, I guess that's what you have to do. But hey, I'm riding a motorcycle. If I've got a 44 tonner 6 inches off my number plate and I stop to let two pedestrians cross the road on the exit to a roundabout, I can hazard a guess as to what's likely to happen next. So my take on that was they were in a relatively safe place. Yes, they had stepped into the road, but they were standing right beside the curb. I would carry on. I wouldn't stop in that circumstance unless there was nothing behind me. In which case, why have I stopped anyway? Because they can cross behind me. So I said at the time, I think those new rules are pretty tricky to operate. My least favorite one is the one where you have to give way to a cycle, which is not just alongside you already when you turn left, which is common sense, of course. But if they are catching you up and would be about to pass you on the near side, you have to stop and let them come up the near side, which I think is complete madness. It's given cyclists the idea that they can overtake everything up the inside. You get people, what's his name, biking Mickey or cycling Mickey.
Cycling Mikey. Yeah,
cycling Mikey. Yeah,
he regularly finds ways of getting himself into trouble so he can video it. And what's his name, David Vine or something? He's another one, isn't he?
Jeremy Vine.
Yeah,
Jeremy Vine. Yeah.
Jeremy Vine,
right,
yeah. David Vine was a football presenter, wasn't he? And I watched some of the situations he gets himself into, and I think if only you had just had a little bit of awareness of what the other driver was likely to do, you would have saved yourself an awful lot of grief. So if I'm turning left in the car and I can see a cyclist coming up behind me, I have no hesitation. I put the car wheels on the pavement so they can't get up the inside. Then I don't have to worry about whether they're trying to pass me on the near side as I make the turn. I think those are the rules there. I'm probably going to get taken in front of that Vietnamese Truth and Lies ministry now and taken to task for questioning a road rule. But
contrary to popular belief, we do not arrest people for posts on social media in this country. But Slow Rider's making the point that I actually wanted to make. the language in the highway code actually says should.
Should.
It doesn't say you must give way to a pedestrian waiting to cross. You must give way if they stepped onto a zebra crossing. But if they're waiting to cross at a junction, you should give way to them. Now, am I going to do it if it's safe for me? Yeah, possibly. Am I going to do it if it's not safe for me because there's somebody coming up and about to rear end me? No, I will live to argue my case in court, hopefully. But if you don't do something that you should, or you do something that you shouldn't, it's open to interpretation at that point, isn't it? It's not, you're not breaking a law. So if you don't give way and you do go past, so long as you don't hit them and cause an accident, it's never going to go to court, right?
But this is how solicitors get you, isn't it? Because you accidentally hit them, even though you made the right decision at that time, and they say, "Well, you should have." Well, all right.
Well, my argument on that is that the highway code has always had those things in there. No laws have changed with the new highway code. All they've done is they made the hierarchy more explicit. There are no laws. No laws have changed. No rules have changed. Right. All they've done is they said, okay, this is how we want you to interpret this. The less vulnerable road users must pay more attention to the more vulnerable road users and give them priority, or should do that, right? It's now an expectation that you do it. So if some harm does come to a pedestrian or a cyclist, then the question will be, well, why didn't you prioritize their safety? You were in a safer vehicle. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification, actually, Angelo. Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. So long as you don't hit anybody, Steve, I'll carry on, you know.
Be all right. Yeah, it was 10 points, isn't it, for an old lady? Sorry. Another question. You're still training people then, are you?
Yeah.
CBTs and that sort of thing?
Not CBTs, not direct access anymore. I haven't done that for a few years. I did 12 years of CBTs, and frankly, knowing that at 10:30 every morning I would be showing the trainee how to turn the ignition on their moped or their 125 got a bit wearing, so I knocked that on the head. The post-test training, no two courses are the same. Whereas
so from your experience and where you're sat then, do you see more people coming into it, young people? Because I think they're still coming in, whether there's less or more, I don't know. But my son's 17. I always thought that people weren't coming in, but in fact, a lot of his friends do have bikes.
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer. Obviously pre the driving license directive, which was 2011, if I remember correctly, which brought in the tiered license system, we would get a lot of 17-year-olds come in, do CBT with us, and then go straight on to take their test on a 125 and get their restricted 33 horsepower license. And then a few years down the line, it would automatically become a full power license. With the new tiered system, of course, the problem is the learners are now caught in a new trap. If you take your test on a 125, you get a full license for a 125. So, of course, what has happened is that nobody actually bothers anymore. They all, I think you can count nationwide the tests on 125s, like on two hands. Hardly anybody bothers. So everybody's waiting till they're older, and then either getting the intermediate license, or in some cases waiting till they're old enough to get the full unrestricted license, because otherwise they've got to jump through all the hoops of the multiple tests, which is horrible for your wallet. I'll be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it'll put people off.
Yeah, it has done. Certainly has taken. It means we've got a new generation of L's riders. This is what I grew up with, was you stuck your old plates on a 125 when you went out riding until you felt ready to take the test.
Yes.
And a lot of people never bothered, because they could ride an RD 250 or whatever in those days, and they never bothered to take the bike test. And now
I do take issue with the CBTs being 2 days. I think they're not going to gain that much more. And if they're going to ride like idiots after that 2 days anyway, or a day, then most of the learning is done out on the road. Once you got that CBT certificate.
I would agree and disagree at the same time. At the moment, the CBT is a real rush. If you've ever delivered one,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I
you
know what you mean.
that you start at 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and you are working absolutely flat out. Now, if I could have, if I could simply double the amount of time that I had on the road, from 2 hours minimum to 4 hours minimum, maybe by doing it on a separate morning, you can take people to so many more hazards and get them much broader
Yes,
experience.
I understand. Yeah.
I used to work out of Lydd on the South Kent coast, and I remember getting pulled up on one occasion by the examiner who came down to see what we were doing, and he said, "You didn't do a hill start." And I said, "This is Romney Marsh. Where do you expect me to do a hill start?" And he had a look round and he said, "Oh yeah, I take your point." And then he said, "But you didn't do a traffic light either." And I said, "This is Romney Marsh. There aren't any traffic signals in Lydd. We would have to go almost to Folkestone to find a traffic light." And he said, "Oh, all right, fair point." With another couple of hours, we could have gone for a longer ride.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. But even if that day was longer, I think like, what's the CBT now? £150 for a day. I think it's 250 for 2 days down here. And again, the people that are doing those CBTs are generally strapped for cash. I think it's fair to say, like many people are, I suppose.
Well, sorry, Steve.
Oh, mate, it's all right.
My issue is not so much that, right? My issue with the current system is this: you go and do a CBT, you pay your 150 quid, and then your CBT runs out in 2 years' time. So your choice is now, okay, I can do, because I've been through this, because I only started riding like 8 years ago. And I've been through this whole process. So your CBT runs out in 2 years. So you got a chance in those 2 years. You got a choice. You can do nothing, or you can pay an awful lot of money to do a DAS, because you got to get all the lessons in the DAS, blah 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 blah. You got to do your mod 1. You got to do your mod 2, or you can work for those 2 years doing Deliveroo, and then in 2 years' time you pay another 150 quid and get another 2 years. And that's what a lot of these guys are doing. They're just doing CBT every 2 years, riding on L plates, doing Deliveroo on other delivery services are available. But there's no limit. You can just keep doing CBT.
Yeah. But again, it's a budget thing, isn't it? Those people are not on a lot of money. So actually trying, and I've known a few people that have said, I really want to do the full test, but there's no way I can afford it. 1,200 quid or whatever it is for a chance of failing.
Yeah, when I was dispatching, one of the big changes was an organization called the Dispatch Association. They're still around, actually. And what they did was they got their members to sign up to a no learner rider pledge. So there were a few cowboy outfits that still employed learner riders, but all the big firms stopped employing learners. And so if you wanted to be a courier, you had to have a full license. Whether it made the situation any safer for couriers, I don't know. I don't think the crash rate for couriers was ever that bad. The problem at the moment is, you're absolutely right, all these people stuck on CBTs forever, no incentive to get anywhere past it, and that is a problem. The whole idea of the 2-year limit on the CBTs was to encourage people to get to the bike test and to get qualified. As they're not doing it, surely that is incentive to make CBT a bit more thorough. Or
to put a limit on the number of times you can take it.
I think that's what they're doing, isn't it? I think
certainly been
it's a suggestion or a proposal.
Yeah, that's the National Motorcycle Council talking.
I would imagine that would wipe out a lot of bikers, don't you? I would imagine a lot of people think, you know what, I'm not paying £1,000 for that. I can get a car. Now's the time to start with a car, maybe.
Yeah, but if you've got a pizza box on the back of the bike, are you really a biker? Are any of those actually going to go on to become motorcyclists, for want of a better word?
Yes.
Most of those people are just doing it as a job. And if they can't do it on a motorcycle, they'll probably get themselves an electric scooter and do it on that instead. Which probably doesn't solve the road casualty problem, but means that at least they're not cropping up in the motorcycle crash stats.
I mean, for me, in short, for me, the CBT, the way I done it in 2004, CBT, and then the direct access, it seemed to work. It was something that did for me wasn't broken. And yet, we got the mod 1, mod 2 now. My son, he really wants to get on a bike, but it's just the cost of it is just mental. It's just great. Whereas back in our day, when we were younger, Kevin, it was a cheap way of transport, and now it isn't anymore, is it?
Yeah, well,
far from it.
Old enough to remember the old round the block test. That was how I passed.
Right.
Without getting into the politics of this too much, one of the things that a lot of people aren't aware of is that the original EU directive, which laid out the tiered license system, it had an option for the movement between tiers to be via training, via a certificated instructor, and it was the DVSA who said we can't do that because we can't certificate instructors to validate a license, completely ignoring the fact that there was already that system in place for a CBT. We validate a provisional license. Why couldn't we validate a license for a motorcycle to a higher tier? And that would have solved a lot of the problems straight off. We also sort of gold-plated all the off-road exercises as mod 1, and again, the original plan there was to run the mod 1 straight into mod 2. But what happened was the failure rate of mod 1 was high enough that there were a lot of examiners kicking their heels, having been booked for a mod 2 test.
I've heard this, yeah.
Not having to being able to take the candidate out on the road. So there are problems in the implementation, and there were certainly problems in the way the DVSA actually exploited it to sell more tests effectively.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's the way that I see it, because I took 5 days off to do my DAS, and it was like a holiday. I absolutely loved it. Really interesting, and I learned obviously a huge amount in a short space of time. But it was achievable in my head. If I did fail my test the first time, then it would have stayed in there, and I could keep practicing on my 125 and then get going again. But yeah, I just seem to think that it's red tape after red tape after red tape. And it seems to be more coming.
Let me condense all of those into a story for you guys, because you asked about young people, and I think we do see young people come through on as an observer with East London Advanced. We do see youngsters. I'm talking people in their 20s and stuff who've done that test and want to do the advanced. So we do see them, and obviously that's going to be just a small fraction of the people who are actually taking the test. But here's a story, and you know the character, Isha Rides. Because you know the channel.
I knew he was going to say that.
Yeah. So she, fairly young thing, tiny little thing as well. Obviously got her a 2 license. Did her IAM, passed her IAM. So an advanced rider on an A2, and then obviously because she then went over the age limit for getting the full A, she then had to do the DAS again.
Oh.
To get the A, she had to go and get. I'm not sure if she had to get a different bike, because I think it has to be a 600cc to do the full A DAS.
It's 70 horsepower or something. It's 50,
I think it's 50,
kilowatts.
isn't it? I think is it 50?
It used to be
49 point something, 500 basically.
It used to be for the A2, but for the full A license, I think it's 72 horsepower. It's something in kilowatts, 55 kilowatts or something.
Yeah. So basically, she then had to do her mod 1 and mod 2 again to get the full A license, and we're basically saying, forget everything we told you in advance. Going right to the DVSA, signal for everything, very rigid. Do this, do this, do this, as opposed to thinking for yourself. But she did it. So she's actually brilliant, and she's now training to be an observer, which is really, really nice to see.
Oh, excellent. Yeah,
I really look forward to her coaching these massive guys on K1600s on her Z400. I really look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. Oh, she's still got the Z400.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Not many bikes that she could use, mate.
Because of the height.
Because of the height, yeah.
Yeah.
She comes with us. She toured Wales, toured Scotland. She's going to tour Ireland with us on that thing, and she's swift. She's very quick on that thing.
Yeah. It's lovely to see her progress. Actually, obviously I don't know what she's doing now, but it's great to hear that she's doing well. Yeah,
she kind of dropped off of YouTube, but just to see her on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Very good.
So if you guys could bring in any new highway code regulations or whatever, what would you like to see?
Oh, I don't like more laws. I think enforce our current laws. What I would actually like to see is proper funding for the police to actually police and enforce the current rules. I was actually talking about that in a video I filmed yesterday. The one thing I would actually like to see, and back in Brazil, where I never took my test, but obviously my brothers live there, you have to re-examine. I think it's just an eyesight test and a fitness test, but every couple of years you have to do it. You have to do it again. You have to obviously basically prove that you can still see, right? I would actually not be against people having to kind of recertify and ensure that they are up to date with the highway code, up to date with the laws, things that have changed, like gantry signs and smart motorways, and that they know the new rules and new types of junctions. Because a lot of people read the highway code, pass the test, and never do it again. And to me, that's a problem. So that's how I would like to. That's what I would like to see. But let's hear from Kevin, because I think he's much more of an expert.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think if there's one thing that I would love to see enforced properly, and that's lane discipline on motorways. The undertaking has become a pandemic around. As you ride around the M25, people are sitting. We've got stretches which are sort of 5 or 6 lanes wide, and there'll be somebody sitting, bimbling along at 45 miles an hour in the 5th lane out, which is bonkers. So and then of course everybody undertakes, and people get into the habit of undertaking. And I've seen some seriously close near misses when people undertake and put themselves and other people at risk. They've got cameras, they're monitoring what's going on. I don't see why they can't start ticketing people who are sitting in the sort of far right lane, holding everybody else up. And equally there are those impatient drivers who, when the motorway is clogged, will just weave in and out. Again, I don't see why they can't be taken off the road. That's
a police funding thing again, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, they get a civilian to watch the videotape.
Yeah. See, I struggle a bit with, we've got a lot of cameras going up in Exeter. Do you know Exeter quite well, Kevin? Or
reasonably well? I've actually run a couple of training courses in Exeter. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But on the main routes in and out, so you got off the M5, Alphington Road, a few places like that. They got these big yellow cameras, and the word is that they're going to bring some sort of ULEZ eventually into Exeter. How true that is, I don't know, but they are cameras which look like no other camera that I've seen before. So, but there is this Big Brother thing. It's getting a little bit intense, if you see what I mean. It's not very nice feeling like every time you get in your car, you may make a human error that somebody's going to snap it and then think, got you. You know what I mean? It puts me on edge a little bit, really. So although I've got nothing against a copper getting me, and to an extent a camera, it just feels like now I feel like I'm going to make a mistake and then think I've had it.
Well, I really don't like these submit your webcam sites that more and more police forces are using. you know, I was reading something. There was a Freedom of Information request, and it was about how many of these videos are actually watched and deemed suitable for prosecution, and the relatively low. You know, which implies, of course, that a lot of people just get hacked off with somebody's behaviour, press the button, record it, and just boot it off to the police.
Yeah.
You know, some people get warnings, written warnings, but yeah, I mean, you rarely see the context of what's going on these videos. That's the thing. You know, I was referring to a couple of channels earlier. You can very selectively film a piece of action and snip off what was going on either side of it and make it look truly awful. And I do not like the idea that Mr. Joe Public is actually the right person to sort of police the roads and send these videos into the police. I think that's a bad idea generally.
Yeah.
I won't comment on that then.
Can I just can I just come back to a comment that I read, which said that the tests are cheap, but it's the training schools that are expensive. I ran a training school for a number of years. I won't say I came out broke, but let's put it this way: I didn't come out any richer than I went in. We were not the most expensive training school in the area, but we were one of the more expensive training schools, which meant we actually ran for 10 years. Several of our competitors who undercut us came in and went bust. You know, there are large overheads, surprisingly large overheads to running a training school, not least the fact you've got to pay insurance. You know, you would not believe how expensive insurance is for training schools. You don't just need to insure the riders when they're out on the bikes, you need to insure the instructors, you need to have professional indemnity insurance, you know, and it all adds up. Even before you start paying for your training ground, we were lucky. We found a school that was willing to let us use a sort of tennis courts of a weekend for not quite nothing, but certainly not very expensive. We didn't actually have to buy or rent a full-time site to run, and we you know, and we still didn't make any money. So, you know, don't blame training schools. Instructors have to eat, and they are, you know, we're entitled to a living wage as much as anybody else.
Running any business in this country is an absolute nightmare now. It's almost becoming impossible to start a business. Which is
what I would say is I don't see many motorcycle instructor schools owners driving Porsches.
No, indeed.
No, exactly. Yeah. And then you've got all the national insurance problem coming up next year as well, haven't you? Where it's going to cost businesses even more for staff to national insurance and all that, which is a big
AW8 some comment. I would propose legal requirement to hold a full license for using vehicle for deliveries. Maybe. I don't think they're actually properly insured to do the job that they do. So here's the thing, right? Everybody wants to complain, but everybody also wants to get their food delivered in 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we've got neighbours upstairs. One of them gets a coffee delivered at 8 o'clock in the morning every morning.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
So somebody's actually riding to a coffee shop to get a cup of coffee delivered.
Yep. Probably the Costa at the end of the road, and then
15 quid.
Quarter of a mile back, and knocking on the door with a coffee. Yeah.
Sue has a
been
comment.
A hard night.
Yeah. Sue has a comment, and Sue is one of my touring partners. Hi, Sue. Looking forward to Ireland. I would like to see a level or equal platform for all road users. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, but okay. Any comments on that?
Well, I guess we're coming back to the sort of hierarchy of harm in a way here, aren't we? Whereas, you know, the idea is that those who do the most damage take the most care, because that is one way of trying to keep the most vulnerable at lower risk. I also think, you know, the hoops that motorcyclists have to jump through to get a license compared with other vehicle groups is fairly dramatically different. And I can see that as in insurance and tests. Yeah, so I've just covered tests. Insurance, what do you do? You know, New Zealand is a joy. Everything is state covered. You just get in a vehicle, you're covered. Doesn't matter who owns it.
Great.
You know, it's all state covered. You pay for that in other ways.
Well, everybody pays for that through taxes there.
Yeah,
I think that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, they're basically levies on the bike, a bit like our road tax, but it's shuffled off into this accident compensation corporation
big
fund.
pot,
right?
Yeah, and yeah, it does. It works. It works well. If you fall off your roof while you're building somebody's house for them, you're covered. If you have a motorcycle crash, you're covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got any more questions. I had a load of questions for Kevin, and it's all gone, all disappeared.
We've been going for nearly 2 hours now, and I feel like the conversation has just flown by. It's been really, really interesting, but maybe we're actually getting to a time of actually wrapping up, because I'm actually starting to feel quite hungry, and I want to go. And I want to go.
New there.
Well, yeah, that's what my wife says. You're always hungry. It's a surprise there.
Kevin, have you got any more books that you'd like to write?
Any more books I'd like to write? Yeah, I've got one. I've got one in mind. There's actually no book which actually simply defines advanced riding. There are books that tell you how to do it. Roadcraft, obviously, the IAM books, but there's nothing that actually says, you know, this is the technique that we're talking about. This is how to explain what it is. So yeah, I've got at least one more still in me.
And how much grief do you get for like you've always got those people who say, no, that's wrong. No, why are you saying that? You must get loads of that, don't you?
Yeah, modest amount. Usually I manage to argue my corner fairly effectively. One of the things we did have provisionally in the list was trail braking.
That nutshell.
I put up an article last year, and it was entitled "The Pros and Cons of Trail Braking." So I wasn't dissing the technique, but half the people who read it only read the bit that I said I wouldn't use trail braking as a default approach to riding into a corner. And I was instantly told that I knew nothing about motorcycling. I had no idea how motorcycles handled. I didn't understand the forces operating on motorcycles, even though the rest of the article spent quite a lot of time actually detailing exactly what I was talking about and why I was saying that. Yeah, it's a really, really useful tool to have in your bag of tricks. It's got me out of trouble numerous times, and I have been trail braking on the road since. Probably since 1981, when they invented the Avon Roadrunner Mark II, which was a spectacularly improved tyre over the Mark I, which used to slide out as soon as you put the brakes on.
Can I just clarify? You trail brake not on every corner, but just when you need to, correct?
Yeah, when I need to, which could be a decreasing radius bend. It could be one where I've just completely made a mess of it and run in far too fast. It could be one where I go round a corner. Never done that. It could be one where I go round a corner and find that somebody's come to a dead stop in front of me. You know, so there are times when you kind of have to trail brake. You just have to do it. And to say, you know, no, it's not in the book. You know, in roadcraft, policemen don't ever use trail braking. It's bonkers. But to start saying that it's the best way to get into the corner, you know, loading the front end and all that stuff. Just go slower. Then you don't need to load the tire.
And when you were doing
that's the great thing about the internet, though, Kevin. It's absolutely chock-a-block full of experts.
Yes. Yes.
That last question, which I was going to ask a little way back, when you were doing your courier running in London, obviously you were younger then, you didn't know what you know now. Was you quite safe back when you were doing that riding, do you think? Well, obviously compared to now, you know a lot more, don't you?
I think it probably took me about 2 weeks to figure out that if I carried on riding round with a view of getting everything delivered as quickly as possible, I wouldn't be lasting very much longer.
Yeah.
And I slowed right down very, very early on. And I realized pretty quickly, watching other couriers, that the ones who had obviously been doing the job for a long time were in no rush. And you watch the best couriers and you watch the police ride, and they could have swapped uniform and you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. And the couriers were basically self-taught. The police had the advantage of a training course based on good principles. But there were, you used to see a few couriers hacking around like lunatics, and they'd be around for a month or two and then you wouldn't see them again, or they'd turn out on a different bike, so you could pretty much guess what happened. So I kind of learned very quickly that the tortoise arrives, the hare doesn't necessarily.
And if you could give
people, I always had that when I was commuting. We'd be a set of traffic lights. There'll be some bikes next to me. As soon as the lights went amber, they were off. I went until green. Then I kept to the speed limit. And guess what happened at the next set of traffic lights? As I was rolling into them, they were all stopped there, and I was always rolling into them. Then they turned. I hardly stopped, and they were doing the traffic light GP, getting to the red light really quickly. And by the time I arrived, we were going again. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve,
question for both of us. No worries. Question for both of you, really. If there's 3 golden nuggets that you can give a new rider or somebody who's been riding for a year, what would they be? I've only got one that I can think of off the top of my head, and that is keep your distance. Very simple. But
yeah, that's an interesting one.
Got you now.
Yeah,
there's so many,
bubble,
isn't there?
I think what you're talking about is your safety bubble. So do your safety bubble. What you want to do is give yourself the space, because space is time to think and react. So don't put yourself in a position where you're tight on space, because tight on space means tight on time to react. So that's how I would go about it.
Yeah, I think I'd go off at a slight tangent here, and I'd say that if you've made a mistake, learn from it. If you are saying here we go again, what didn't you learn from the previous time? That experiential learning, it has to count for something. We have to be able to pull something out of things on the road and learn lessons. And if we simply blame everybody else for things going wrong, we're never going to learn any lessons.
No. I've done it many times. I've mainly on I'm actually better at filtering, I think, and that's something the police was it police safe they call it? That course
Bike
they
safe.
do? Bike safe, that's the one. It's something that he picked on. He said that you seem more comfortable in the city rather than out and about, which was quite bizarre. But I get what he means. I've lived in Exeter. I'm always driving through traffic, so I've made my mistakes. Sometimes I've misjudged something, and you learn for the next time, don't you? And you think, I cocked up, but you've normally got a subconscious get out of jail card, haven't you? You can kind of look and think, I'm in this position now, I'm safe here, and then hopefully I'll be able to rectify that mistake with the help of somebody who's nice enough to let me in or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's what I would caution against on that aspect is to, just because you've done the same thing before, you're going to expect the same result, right? Because you get the confirmation bias, because you've done the certain thing a number of times and it's always correct, and it's never landed you in trouble, doesn't mean that it's always going to work. And what we try to do, especially when we do the advanced, is to say, judge every situation on its merits, because it always depends. What you should be doing on what you can see, and then going through the system. Case in point is, taking out an associate on a first ride, and he comes to Redbridge roundabout. Kevin might know it, and 2 lanes of traffic completely free, and he's in lane 1, behind a queue of cars. we stopped for the debrief afterwards, and he says, "Why were you in lane 1?" I said, "I always take lane 1 when I go into Red Bridge roundabout." Okay.
Yeah.
You're not. You at that point, you're not thinking. You're just following. You're just following a. This is what I've always done. And the problem with that is you then get people to say, "Well, I've always driven after a couple of pints and I've never been in an accident. So that must be safe."
Yeah. No, I know what you mean there. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can justify it, there's a difference between a habit which people don't think about, and then there are things that we do because we know they work more often than not. And so, if you get an answer back from somebody who says, "Well, if you go up in lane 2, you'll always find someone who takes the wrong exit, and I'm safer in lane 1," or something along those lines, then maybe it'll work for them. So
something that makes me cringe actually is when you see young, right, and again, this is kind of a self-taught thing by me, so no one take any notice of what I'm saying, for God's sake. But it's when people or bikes will sit in the lane of traffic. They haven't got the confidence to filter. Fair enough. But they'll sit on, you're just asking for somebody to give you a rear end shunt, or a lorry not to see you properly and wallop up you go. Well, it's actually safer to get to the front, isn't it? I think, to the traffic lights and then get going quickly.
It's safer to be in between stopped cars.
Yes.
Not to be at the back of the queue. It's safer if there's a barrier. Not necessarily. You don't have to necessarily be at the front. Being at the front could actually be quite dangerous because you never know what the guy next to you wants to do, right? He might want to race you off the line.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant, really. Yeah, I try and get to the front if I can, and I can't. But, I try to, and then I get quickly off the lights, get my safety bubble as soon as I can, and then up to the speed limit, maybe a couple miles over.
Sounds like you should go on one of Kevin's courses now.
Oh, I probably should. I've said to you, Nib, I'd love to do a course like that. I would, but
okay,
too busy making videos.
Yeah. Well, guys, on that note, I mean, I think Kevin, when you and I had planned this, it was going to be for 1 hour, and we'd nearly doubled that. And really, time has flown by. I've found this super interesting. So thank you, and we still have like 13 people. I think we had 17 people at one point watching, and I want to thank everybody who's been in the chat. AW8's participated on that long. Dave Payne, Peaky Biker, hi Peaky, Slow Rider, Sue, Andy, Gregor. Some people have left already because it's quite a thing to watch for 2 hours, but I think it's been entertaining throughout. I don't think it's been it's been worthwhile watching it. I've really enjoyed it. So I really want to thank you, Steve, because you've always a great support.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me, and nice to meet you, Kevin.
You help things run along, and you ask nice questions. And Kevin, thank you very much for giving your time to this. It's for me, it's been very pleasurable and entertaining. Hope you got something out of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much indeed for inviting me on. I've had a really fun time, actually. Great to talk to people. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about your biking history, the sort of science stuff that you're doing in terms of taking scientific papers and putting it in kind of layman's terms and helping people to try to change their thinking and take charge of their own safety, which I think is really important, instead of trying to blame everybody else and trying to expect everybody else to look after their safety, but to take active steps to improve and stay alive. So I think that was really good. We talked about some of your amazing bikes and biking history. It's been great. And again, thanks to everybody who turned up in the comments. I really enjoyed it. And with that, I think it's time to say goodnight. And
thank you.
See you on the next one. For now, from everybody here, this is Noob out.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.